Hello everyone, this is Yonsei University's English Literature Master's student Yeso Kim, and I will be doing a presentation on one of Irish playwright Samuel Beckett's play, Happy Days. It says in the introduction of the version of the book I got that this is one of his whimsical plays, and I think it says whimsical because it's not really that visually spectacular. It's really metaphorical and minimalistic, and actually, the main character is buried in dirt. That's literally what happens in the play. But if you ever get a production of this play, I think you will see the actresses and the actors acting at their best. And I think we will be able to glean so many good points from this play. So let's begin. So more about the author. Samuel Beckett was an Irish writer, theatre director, and literary translator who won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1969. He was born on 13th of April 1906 and died 22nd of December 1989. He wrote not only plays but novels, short stories, and poems, and is one of the key members of what theatre critic Martin Esslin calls the theatre of the absurd. We'll go more into the theatre of the absurd later on, but I'll introduce his more notable works. His works include Endgame, Kraft's Last Tape, Happy Days, and Waiting for Godot. This is one of the famous plays, and if you ever get a chance to go check them out, it's not a traditional play as there's a linear storyline, or you can understand what the characters are saying, and it's almost that it doesn't really even matter what the characters are saying. I just say not. I don't say that because the characters' words don't have meaning. It's not because the characters' words don't have meaning, but it's because the words of the characters as a metaphor for another could be the meanings of the play. So let's get into what. So this is how he looks like. So this is Samuel Beckett in when he was in the 1970s. I got this picture from the internet, and from what I see here, he was a very thoughtful man and very pensive, I should say. So, and more about the theatre of the absurd. It's a term coined by the theatre critic Martin Esslin. It's a theatre and trend and movement of the mid-20th century after World War II, mostly in Europe and the US. The characters' words can't communicate. The characters' lines don't make sense. The lines lose meaning. The direction and the acting is strange and surrealistic, and the visuals and the sets of the play are surrealistic too. And notable writers include today's writer Samuel Beckett, Eugen Ionesco, Harold Pinter, and Arthur Asimov. And Happy Days is a tragic comedy about losing communication, connection, and linear thinking, and nothing matters because everything is tragically free. Words are a medium of sentiment, and the main character, Winnie, is stuck in a dirt mound but asserts herself with no bounds. And Winnie thinks of the happy days that used to be when she first fell in love with her husband Willie, and she is forever optimistic. But Willie expresses himself in a limited manner, and you would say that Willie is the more glum character, the gloomy character. So this is literally a dirt mound that the character is buried in, and there's a literal dirt mound on stage, and you can see the dirt mound on stage, and the main actress is buried in it. And the first act, she's buried to her waist, and the second act, she's buried to her neck. In the second act, all she moves is her face and her eyes. So that's something to look at. I think that'll be a very good chance for actresses to show their acting skills. So more about the characters. So Winnie is, like I said, is buried up to her waist in the first act, and up to her neck in the second act, and does most of the talking, while Willie, her husband, reads his newspaper and responds to Winnie in short grunts. And he is almost never visible throughout the acts. And he crawls into his Willie crawls into his hole and has difficulty crawling into his hole. And in the end of the second act, he does something very specific. And more, if I say more, there'll be spoilers, so I won't say any more, but we'll move on. In this play, about the plot, there's almost no plot, and it doesn't matter that there's no plot. Winnie is just talking to her husband in a dirt mound, and her husband responds with short bursts of words. Winnie goes about her day with the ring of the bell, under the hot sun with no protection, with occasionally talking to Willie, and Willie is a very short, Willie responds in very curt manner. And I read this in a book about writing recently, that it is not even true that every story has to have a plot. And the plot in this play is Winnie literally talking to her husband and reminiscing about her old days of the happier days, and thinking that she'll someday go back to it. And like the writer of the writing book says, like Damon Nice says, it is not even true that every story has to have a plot. And Happy Days doesn't really have a plot. But I say that doesn't take away from the metaphor and the imagery of the play. And the things that the play explores is the mundane triviality of Winnie and Willie's existence. No one explains how Winnie got stuck in a dirt mound, but Winnie is forever optimistic. Willie labors in his dirt hole and is there for Winnie to talk to, and the imagery of the blazing light, the immovable Winnie, and the crawling Willie point to the representation of humanity that is mundane, pointless, and yet so lofty and noble. And some quotes that I got from the play is that Winnie someday dreams of a day that she'll be pulled out of the dirt mound, and she says, "And that perhaps someday the earth will yield and let me go. The pull is so great, yes, crack all around me and let me out." That's what Winnie says. And in the second act, Willie just says, "Win." That's in response to Winnie. And I think there's a very interesting thing to look at, as Willie doesn't have any words, but he doesn't even need many words to communicate. And the works cited are as follows, and thank you so much for joining me today, and I will perhaps see you in another video later on. I hope you enjoyed the video presentation for today, and here are the credits. It's all done by me, and this is just a minor thing, but I didn't use any AI on the presentation or the music or the PPT or the recording. Maybe I can say I used AI on the recording, but it's a computer program, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Thank you so much. Bye bye.